Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about JavaScript and events. A lot of people, actually probably the thing that people ask me about the most have to do with events in JavaScript, so I figured I'll give a little rundown of how they work, what they are, and how to use them. So what you see here is a simple HTML document. It just has a div and a button, and then a script tag, and that's where we're going to be doing our JavaScript. So you can see here, this is our button, and so basically what an event is basically when a user interacts with your web page in some way, whether that's via the mouse, the keyboard, dragging elements across other elements. There are all sorts of events. Just to name a few, there's click, which is probably the one you'll use the most, touch start, touch end for any touch devices like phones or tablets. You'll have key down, key up, and then mouse down, mouse up. And those are just a few. There are literally tons of events in JavaScript. So I'm going to be walking you through how to attach them now and how to use them. So let's say when we click this button we want it to do something. Right now it doesn't do anything. So that's pretty useless. So let's say we actually want that to write a message into our console, which by the way you can get to by right-clicking on your page, inspect element, and then clicking on the console tab. This is in Chrome. In Firefox it's a little bit different, especially if you're using Firebug, which is a plugin that you can get. But anyway, in Chrome, that's how you get to it. Alright, so I believe this is the first way to attach events, and it's luckily going away now. You don't see it too much, but I've still occasionally run into it a few times in my career, and it is really annoying every time I do because it's a terrible thing and you should never do it. But just to let you guys know that this is a possibility, you can come in here into your button element and essentially add an attribute called onClick, and then you can say, you can give it a function that you want it to call. So down here in our script tag, you can say function button click, and then we'll go ahead and do a console log and say I've been clicked. So now when we click on this button, you'll see it say I've been clicked. And if you can't see that, I'll make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Don't do this though. This is awful and terrible, and it's really hard to debug and find sometimes because you don't know if you're looking for it in your script somewhere and you can't find where the event was attached. So just don't do this. You'll make me happy, and probably anyone else who has to deal with your website. So then you might ask, well, how do we actually attach an event then to an element? And then you would need to do this in your JavaScript, and this is when you would do something like document.querySelector button, and then from here you have two methods that you can use. You can either just do onClick equals button click, much like what we did before, and this will do what you want it to. Or you can do add event listener, and then click, and then button click. And that works just the same. Now, I will also say that you can also just go right ahead and not even worry about defining the function on a separate line, and that will work just fine as well. Now, I do not do this, and I don't like doing this because then you just have a bunch of element selectors and functions everywhere, and that's just not, it's not pretty. And so I really much prefer to split things out. And oftentimes I will define all my functions at the top of my JavaScript and then do all of my attachments at the bottom. Okay, so those are all the different ways to attach. Now I'm going to argue for what I think is the better way. So when you do onClick here, there's only so much you can do. I mean, this is basically what it is. You can only define one function per click. So this is it. You can't do, if I was to make a separate or another function and call it button click 2, I've been clicked a second time. The only event that you will see is the second one. You will not see the first one. The reason is because this is overriding this first event assignment. So again, just to iterate, you can only have one event per when you use the onClick method. Now, if you use the add event listener method, then click and then button click, we'll just go ahead and do this to make it simpler. Okay, so now both of these are actually going to fire. And there you go. This can be really helpful when you need one click to do several different things, but you want to split out your functionality into multiple functions. And you can also just add as many events as you want to one element. So that's one of the reasons I prefer this. Another reason is because you can specify the phase in which the event is triggered. Now, let me explain exactly what I mean by that. So an event gets triggered in one of two ways, in one of two phases. It can either be triggered in the capture phase or the bubble phase. The capture phase goes from top to bottom. So anytime that you click on something, it would first go to the wrapper and then to the button. So it goes from the outside in or from the top to the bottom. And then after that phase is completed, it then does the bubble phase, which then bubbles back up to the top. So you will go up from button to wrapper. The default event phase that all events are triggered on is the bubble phase, and you can add a third parameter into the add event listener if you want to, and this is called the use capture boolean, and like I said before, its default value is false. But let's go ahead and we will make this called wrapper click, and we'll just make this say wrapper, and we'll make this one say button, and then we'll go ahead and put wrapper here, and then we'll just say wrapper click. Okay, so we're still using the bubble phase, so what you're going to see is you'll see the buttons event trigger first and then the wrapper. So if we refresh the page, button and then wrapper. However, if we switch these to both say true, we'll see the opposite, because now we're using the capturing phase. So if you press the press me button, you'll now see wrapper button. So sometimes that can be really useful, but for the most part, you really just want to stick with bubble, because it goes from specific to general. And you get this thing called event delegation, which I'll go into in a later video. But essentially, this will bubble all the way up to the body even. So even if I did another div just for no reason other than to make things more nested, I can come in here and I can say document.body add event listener, click function, and then console.log body. And so now it will go from the button to the wrapper. It will skip this because it doesn't have, well, it doesn't skip it, it goes through it, and since there aren't any events attached to this element, nothing will happen, but then it'll get to the body, and the body will fire off its event. So let's watch that in practice here. Button wrapper body, just as we expected. So every event, every click event will bubble all the way up to the HTML tag, and that's actually how some people like jQuery, or some libraries like jQuery, do really cool things like their on method, where you can attach, it essentially attaches an element or an event to the body tag or a parent tag of whatever element you specify, and then you can change that the children of that parent however you want, and it will still register that event. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. It's really cool. Alright, so I think there are two more things that I want to talk about that are really important. So for one, actually I guess three. If I was to remove this button and then add it back, that button would not have the event anymore. So if I came back here, and if I delete this parent element dot move child, if I did this and then created a button and added it, it wouldn't, that event wouldn't fire anymore. That was kind of a useless thing to say, but there you have it. In addition, the more important thing, every callback, which are what these functions are called here, these are callbacks that are called back from the event. Every callback has a parameter that's passed in automatically. You can either ignore it or you can have it, and it's the event itself. So if you want to, you can actually see pretty much all of the data from the event. So now when we click on the button, you'll see event here, and it has this whole event that shows you which button you were, let me make this a bit smaller. It has the button you were trying to get to. You can open this up and see everything. So it's highlighting where your source element is, where your target, what time it is that you clicked it, the type, where you clicked it on the element, where you clicked it on the screen. It's got all sorts of information, and then it also has, I'm going to get into this in another video. It tells you if the control key's down, tells you all sorts of important things. So that's really good, especially for when you're trying to do touch events and you need to find out where exactly your touch occurred. In addition, you have the this keyword. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the wrapper click. And what this refers to is, inside of a callback, is the element that the event occurred on. So it's actually going to be the button. And that is extremely powerful because you can know exactly which element was clicked, and then you can use that and modify it. So you can say this dot inner HTML equals yay. And so now when I click the button, that changes to say yay. And you just already have this reference right there. So that's really handy. I believe the last thing that I wanted to say in this video that I forgot to mention a little bit earlier is that when you are dealing with the bubbling phase, it will only work for events of the same type. So for instance, if I did function button key, and then, or sorry, that's going to be wrapper. And then if we came in here and attached a key down event, oops, that was the wrong place. Key down event to the wrapper, it's not going to do anything because it is not an event of the same type. However, as soon as I change it to a click, we'll get that bubbling that we saw earlier. And then one more thing that I just remembered. When you are when you're telling the callback that you want to happen when the event occurs, normally when you call a function, you would do something like button click with parentheses. I'm going to get rid of this. This is going to make things confusing. You normally put parentheses at the end to call it. However, if you did that here, it's actually going to occur when you assign it. So it's going to happen an extra time. So when I refresh the window, you're going to see click, because it's actually calling the method as it's assigning it. That can be an okay thing to do if that's what you want, but for the most part, you don't want that to happen. You just want to register that this function is what's supposed to be called when I click this element. And so that's exactly how that works. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or need me to clarify something, just let me know in the comments, and I will try to reply to that quickly. I think the next video that I'm going to do is more about event delegation and how that can be handled and prevented. Until next time.